from the chair.
Welcome back to A View from the Chair. I am your host, Patrice Jordan Robinson, Chair of your Memphis City Council and City Council District 3 Representative. Know that your Memphis City Council is working diligently along with the Mayor's office to ensure the safety and security of all of our citizens and visitors alike, even in trying times like these. Safer at home is still the best policy. As part of those efforts, we've invited today Doug McGowan, our Chief Administrative Officer, and Shirley Ford, our Chief Financial Officer, to A View from the Chair. Today to talk about our city's fiscal outlook in the present as well as budget projections into 2021. So you don't want to go anywhere. You don't want to miss it.
A View from the Chair on the Kadzukian Network.
Our experience with Kadzukian has been amazing. They are creative, innovative, flexible, work really hard, and they find the answer to every problem we put in front of them, every challenge we offer. We couldn't have better partners than Kadzukian.
Welcome back to A View from the Chair. And as promised, joining me today is the City of Memphis CAO, Doug McGowan, and CFO, Shirley Ford. Welcome to the program today.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Chairman Robinson. We appreciate the opportunity to be here with you.
You're quite welcome. We're so excited to be able to talk about the number one issue concerning all Memphians as well as Americans and everyone around the world. Let's get right to it. Chief McGowan, we're seeing significant compliance with our Safer at Home directives. So when I say that, I mean that the sheltering in place, you're seeing people are actually being compliant. Are there any areas where we have some disappointment?
Well, thank you for asking, Chairwoman. That is right. We are very pleased with the very vast majority of people in our area who are complying with the Safer at Home orders. But as with everything, there's always a few people who just believe that the rules don't apply with them, or they just don't want to believe that this threat is as serious as it is. So we are seeing several businesses that are non-essential that are staying open. They're trying to skirt the rules a little. We understand how important it is for people to bring in revenues, but it's even more important to comply with the Safer at Home order if you're a non-essential to quell the spread of this virus. We're also seeing some gatherings people are having. Relatively large gatherings of people in small areas around the city, some birthday parties, some other things that are outside. Remember, whether you're inside or outside, you have to maintain that social distancing. We've also seen some religious gatherings where folks have chosen to gather to express their freedom of religion, and we certainly don't want to impose upon that, but we also must mandate social distancing. And that's why we've asked for everybody to hold their services online to the extent that they can or remotely. So we do have a few problem areas, but we are working on that. The health department and all law enforcement are coming together to make sure that we're giving people the information they need so that they can be compliant.
So, Chief McGowan, are we looking at a certain percentage of our population to participate in this process so that we won't spread that virus any further? Is it half of us? Is it 75%? Is it 100? What are we looking for?
Well, the best opportunity is for 100%, but we know we'll never get there. There are some times when people need to leave their home. They have to go get essentials at the grocery store. They may have to pay a visit to the doctor, but we're asking people to really take a good look at that. But the percentage, if we can change our mobility by more than 65%, in other words, more than a 65% change in our movements in and around the city of Memphis for every individual, that will significantly curtail the virus. And what that means is more than half of the time, the things that you're doing as an individual, you should not be doing. So you need to drive that down. 65 to 75% is the standard that will really make a big difference in our community.
Thank you, Chief McGowan. COVID-19 has literally caused many municipalities to rip to shreds their current fiscal year budgets. They were approved in 2019. Fiscally, how are we doing, Chief Ford?
Well, I will tell you, Councilwoman, 3 weeks ago I would have provided a very different answer. But we are continuing to monitor the impact on the economy with significant unknowns and ever-evolving conditions. I am in the process of providing financial scenarios for the mayor and Chief McGowan to review, but I will emphasize that this is an environment of anything but business as usual. We are staying in contact with the State Comptroller's Office. We are looking for guidance from our Department of Revenue on any developments that come about, and mostly those are coming about daily. But yes, this is a serious issue for municipalities across our state, as we are going to struggle to try to put a pin in some very fluid movements through our economy.
So, Chief Ford, are we looking at stopping all spending, or are we freezing anything so that we can make sure we have the funds available to address the issues as they come up with this pandemic?
We have, in fact, put hiring freezes in place already. Those went in several weeks ago. We are looking very closely at all purchasing that is coming through our procurement to ensure that we are only doing those that are absolutely mission critical, and we will continue to monitor those types of spending. This is unprecedented in our environment, and we will just continue to monitor that on a daily basis.
Chief McGowan, our small business community, they, I know, are taking a hit. Typically, they have working capital last through very short downturn cycles, but this is much different. And has the Small Business Association begun the loan process right here in Shelby County?
That's a great question. We know and very much appreciate those small businesses who are making this sacrifice in order to stop this pandemic. I know at the federal level they have approved the monies for these small business loans. There is a process for that to come down to the local authority. We are prepared here at the local authority to begin issuing those. I do not believe we have issued any yet because we do not have yet all of the authorities to do that, and the money has not been transferred to us. And I think some of that is coming through the banks as well. So there's, as with any new program, there's a little bit of churn and some hiccups at the beginning, but I anticipate that this week that money should begin flowing to our small businesses who are applying for those loans.
So, Chief Ford, with relationship to small businesses and their contribution to our tax base, I know that that's monumental. Have you seen any data to show how significant a disruption this virus has had on our sales tax collection to date?
Well, we are obviously concerned about all of our businesses, local, state, and nationally. And since we run in arrears to receive our sales tax revenues, we will not actually see the impact of April until June. However, during our conversations with the State Department of Revenue and the State Comptroller's Office, we've been advised to expect significant declines in sales tax revenue. For the City of Memphis, our sales tax revenues generally represent approximately 23% of our operating revenues for the general fund. So this is obviously something that we will be keeping a very close watch on, and as we stay in communication with the Department of Revenue and the State Comptroller's Office, we can try to be flexible to see how those revenues are going to be reported in.
What are the financial stimulus packages out there for just the regular, ordinary citizen, and what's available to businesses, so that we make sure on this show that they know that they have some help and it's on the way and it's going to be soon?
Certainly, we all understand there's a stimulus check that's coming to most families. We can't control the speed that comes from the federal government, but we know that that's going to be incredibly helpful to families that need it. We know that there is opportunity here in the community. In fact, I'm here at the Central Library today, and we're doing some food distribution for families who are food insecure and for our school children, so that resource is available. Our food bank is available to provide for the nutritional needs of all of our citizens. The other piece I'd like to mention is that we do have a response fund, a community response fund through the Community Foundation. And many of our nonprofits who already meet the needs of our citizens with short-term grants and other kinds of services, that fund is set up specifically to give those nonprofits the ability to provide more services to people who need it. So the direct cash infusion will be coming from the federal government, but we are increasing the capacity of all of our nonprofits to serve citizens, including citizens who may never have need of that service. So I would ask anybody who is in need, the number to call is 211, and they will assess any particular need that you might have, and they will direct you to the right resource so that you can get that the help that you need.
Thank you, Chief. You know, it is so important for people to know that we have help and people to answer those lines. How is the staffing?
That's a great question. We typically have a staff that's here during regular business hours, and then we have staff. We also, as you know, have a 311 line, and that's for reporting potholes and other outages. We have increased the staff for both of those agencies. We have people who have been volunteered to train up to fill in the gaps there. And we also have, there's a number that's the mayor's action line over at Shelby County who is also taking calls. So, and we have done everything we can to increase the staff at both of those agencies, or all three of those agencies rather, so that we can take the volume of calls that we know we're going to get. Okay.
Chief McGowan, let me ask you a question. For citizens that are listening here today, if they have any problems or want to report any businesses that are out of compliance, who do they need to call?
Well, for just a general day-to-day problem, if it's something that's not working, then you would call that to 311. And if it's another problem with a non-compliant business, you would report that to the mayor's action line. If you're in the City of Memphis, we'll certainly take that call at 311. But the county mayor's action line, and if you give me just a second, I'll read that number back to you here. But while we're taking the next question.
Okay. And the next question is, if citizens want to go out and walk, what is our directive? Can they go out and walk? Can they take their children outside and walk along the sidewalks? And I know we have closed playground equipment, but can they still walk in the park?
The answer is absolutely yes. In fact, we encourage people to take the opportunity to improve their health by walking. We do encourage people when they're outside, though, to take those social distancing measures while you're out walking and avoid the temptation to gather in large groups or be close together. I've seen people out walking, and people are doing this in a very safe and successful way. We encourage people when they are outside to bring a mask and to wear a mask anytime, to cover your face anytime you're outside the house. Because while you can control your own actions, sometimes you can't control those of others, and some people may want to get a little closer to you than you're comfortable with. So that's one of the reasons we ask that you cover your face. If you don't have a surgical mask, then a cloth mask is fine. And if you don't have that, then you can just create one on your own from a bandana or another piece of material, and we have some instructions on the website. But absolutely, please get out and enjoy the weather. Please walk. Please improve your health while you have the opportunity to do so. But just don't do so in a large group and maintain your social distance.
Okay, thank you. And don't have birthday parties in the garage.
That's right.
On the street. Thank you. So, did you find that number?
I'm working on it. I'll have it for you in 1 second.
Okay, so this is what we're going to do now. We'll be right back with more A View from the Chair and my guests, Chief McGowan and Chief Ford. So stick around and know that we have a number for you to use in case of emergency. Thank you.
Jazz, America's own original musical art form. When did it start? Who were and are some of the major players? How do you distinguish what kind of jazz you're listening to? We talk about the great and lesser-known artists, songs and tunes, the instruments, and the social impact jazz has had on world culture since its beginning at the start of the 20th century.
Riffin' on Jazz on the Kadzookian Network. Kadzookian!
We're back with my very special guest, Chief Doug McGowan and Chief Shirley Ford with the City of Memphis. I know that you've been waiting for this number to report noncompliance and anyone having parties on the street. Chief Doug McGowan?
Yes, ma'am. So to report noncompliance, you can call the Mayor's Action Center. That is the Shelby County Mayor's Action Center. And that number is 901-222-2300. That's 222-2300. And you can report any noncompliance if you believe there's a business that is not complying with the safer at home order, if you believe there are large groups of people that are gathered and not doing so and not complying with the safer at home order, or if you think there's just a dangerous situation where a number of people are too close together, please call 222-2300.
Chief, thank you for sharing that number. It's so important that we all participate in this process so that we can have a safer city in which to live. So, Chief McGowan, our city employees are still carrying out their needed services. Has there been any major hiccups with the new normal?
I'm happy to report that there are no major hiccups. Our police officers are still on the street. Our firefighters are still ready to respond. Our emergency medical providers are ready to respond. We are still picking up all of our solid waste. That's our trash service every week. All of our water systems are in good working order, and all of our sewer systems are all still in working order. The biggest impact that people will no doubt see is the safer at home compliance. And that means that our libraries are closed, our community centers are closed. Now, we are using them as a food distribution point, and we understand what an inconvenience that is, but those are places where we encourage people to normally gather, and since we can't do that, the biggest impact really is in parks, libraries, and community centers. As I said, I do want people to use the parks in a passive way, but not to gather in a large group. But that's the biggest visible impact. All else is still operating normally.
So do we have a city employees who are being quarantined?
We certainly do. We are not immune from this as any other employer is. I don't have an exact number for you, but the number is small. The biggest concern we have are for our first responders, our police officers, firefighters, and paramedics who come into close contact with individuals who may be positive. So we do have a number of individuals who are quarantined, but it has not yet affected our mission readiness.
Thank you. Chief Ford, in another episode, we're going to talk a little bit more about the technical aspects of the budget. But for now, how difficult is it to plan for our 2021 budget when we aren't sure of the reimbursements from the federal government?
Well, you are absolutely correct, Councilwoman. Cities across the state and the nation are facing major public health and public safety challenges at the same time that we're facing probably unprecedented financial challenges and perhaps even as a crisis. And just simply put, the demand and the need for our core local government services has increased significantly. And at the same time, we're also trying to project those levels of revenue loss. We are hopeful that we will soon receive federal and state guidance related to the reimbursements, relief funds, financial aid, and the economic packages that will allow some flexibility in the use of these funds. So in the meantime, we are just navigating through the uncertainty and making difficult decisions based on the best information that we have right now.
So, Chief, let me ask you another question. I'm talking to Chief Ford. I am a little concerned. I participate on a call every week with other council people or presidents of cities of 500,000 or more. And the first question that they asked on our call last Friday was, how are we planning for our future past the virus? And my response was, I think we're preparing for the surge, and we haven't done a lot of talk about the future. So correct me if I'm wrong.
No, I think you are correct in that we are trying to kind of piecemeal our approach to this. Obviously, we have to deal with the pandemic at hand. We have to be able to address core service needs to run, again, as Chief McGowan said, protection for our first responders who are still out there in this every single day. And then as we, as we try to project what the next 12 months are going to look like, our hope is that as we approach the surge, which I think by all information, it appears that we are getting close to that we can see the decline of this coming down and how then we can be flexible to approach the remaining months of the fiscal year to determine, how the impact of these first couple of months are going to have on our operating budget, our capital improvement plan budgets, and all of our other special revenue funds. So it is indeed a time of uncertainty, but one that we are looking at in different phases. Number one being the phase at hand, and number two, where we are looking at what our future will look like.
Thank you. Chief McGowan, the President has recently extended our safe distance policy to April 30th. Is there any information that the mayor has received that would give our citizens hope that possibly we'll be able to return to some normalcy by then?
Well, I'd be hesitant to give any specific date. I do want to give people hope. We will get through this. Our nation will get through this, but more importantly, Memphis, Tennessee will get through this. We've faced adversity before in our city, and undoubtedly we will face it again. But I want everybody to have hope. In the long view, we will get through this. I can't give you a specific date about April 30th, but we all know that this is fundamentally going to change things for us for the next month or so. And our precautions will also have to be in place for probably a few more weeks or months after that, just to make sure we don't have a resurgence of this. But as soon as we can, we will begin to lift the restrictions that are in place. I want to make sure everybody understands we are not in that position now. We have no information that says we should begin to do that anytime in the next few weeks or months. But as soon as we possibly can, we will begin to do that.
Thank you, Chief McGowan. So, Chief, I know usually around City Hall we have a lot of citizens and employees in and out and tourists. What have changed? What are the protocols that are different for citizens accessing the City Hall?
Well, that's a great question. City Hall is much like any other place where people gather. It's restricted at this moment. We've done everything we can so that you can pay your taxes online or through the mail so that you don't have to come to City Hall. We have a process in place in case somebody wants to come in person and they just don't want to take advantage of those other means, that we're not going to impose any fines or fees. Now, the taxes and payments are still due, but we're just going to hold those in abeyance until we get through this. For the other services, our service centers have come up with some ingenious ways to provide those services, so we have some additional online resources. We are doing very much like some of the businesses are, where you're doing curbside service, or we're doing appointment-only service. So, for instance, we have developers, and there are still some building developments happening in and around town. Our Office of Planning and Development is working with those individuals to have a scheduled appointment or to meet them curbside in order to take their application. So right now, City Hall is typically bustling, but today it is very, very quiet because we are trying to keep everybody safe. But as I said, those services must continue, and we're trying to be as creative as we possibly can, just like the entrepreneurs in town, to keep that service happening.
Thank you. So in the process of preparing all these moving parts, I know that we're working with emergency management. Can you just kind of describe for the citizens what you do on a daily basis, how many people are involved, so they understand the complexity of what's going on?
I appreciate you asking that. We locally, in response to the COVID-19 pandemic, formed a joint task force that was started with the City of Memphis and Shelby County together. That we have been joined by all of the municipalities in Shelby County, Arlington, Lakeland, Bartlett, Collierville, Germantown, Millington, as well as the surrounding counties. West Memphis and South Haven are a part of that. We have all of the agencies that typically support city operations, from transportation in logistics. We also have all of the major hospital systems that are a part of this joint task force. And we all come together under the joint task force umbrella. Every day we meet at 8 o'clock in the morning via teleconference to coordinate action for the day. And those actions are to do things like expand the amount of testing that we're doing, expand the messaging around social distancing and compliance with the social distancing and safer at home order. We are preparing for a surge in patients so that we are able to take on additional capacity at our hospitals and through our emergency medical service. And so we're also working on the provision for personal protective equipment. There are literally hundreds of people on that coordination call in the morning, and then there are subgroups that are working each and every day on each individual element. For instance, testing, the surge capacity at the hospitals and through our community. For instance, today we have a meeting at 1 o'clock, which today is Monday. We have a meeting at 1 o'clock to coordinate efforts with the state of Tennessee, who is providing us resources for an alternative care facility should we need that. That we would need that if our hospitals simply run out of room. What do we do with people? We can't just turn them away. So literally from the state level, the federal level, all of the local municipalities and counties in and around Memphis and Shelby County, we are all working in this together along with our partners in the health community to make sure that we have the very best response and that we get through this pandemic and can return to normalcy as soon as possible.
Thank you, Chief McGowan. I want to thank all of our listeners for joining us here on A View from the Chair, and especially our guest, CAO Doug McGowan, and Chief Financial Officer Shirley Ford. We'll be back with some closing thoughts.
R&R on Sports.
Brother Rashad McCants, welcome to R&R on Sports.
Thanks for having me, brother.
It's R&R on Sports.
A View from the Chair. I hope to bring you information from those who work every day for the betterment of our great city. Until next time, I am Patrice Jordan Robinson, your host, Chairwoman of the Memphis City Council.
A View from the Chair.
Recorded at Kudzukian Studios. Directed, produced, and distributed by Kudzukian.